All right, beginning with the top story of the hour, the Supreme Court has clarified that deletion of a person's name from the electoral roll does not result in the loss of citizenship. The court said the Election Commission has control over the electoral roll, but questions of citizenship must be decided by the central government through the due legal process. And the observation came while hearing a petition related to voters removed from the electoral roll in West Bengal. Now, joining me on the telecast is a special guest, Rashid Kirwai, visiting fellow, ORF, senior journalist and political commentator. Thank you so much for joining me on the telecast. Obviously, we've seen that what Supreme Court has said. What do you think is this a constitutional distinction in terms of this when we talk about the role of EC, and in terms of this does not mean that even if your name is deleted from the voter list, it does not mean that you're not a citizen?
Look, there is a lot of confusion, misgivings, politically motivated campaigns around citizenship, voting right, and a host of other things, and which is very unfortunate because citizenship in India is at one level it can be complicated, but it is very simple. That any person who's living in India and born, or his father or grandparents were born, is a citizen of India. So the emphasis of the central government and law enforcing agencies should be on inclusion rather than exclusion. But it has been weaponized by both sides. The opposition is building a narrative. There are many political parties in the opposition ranks who are building this narrative that Narendra Modi government is determined to deny citizenship rights and many kind of what we call it as a Labharthi Yojana, that poor schemes to people, particularly marginalized section, members of minority community, and a vote bank that does not vote for Mr. Narendra Modi or the BJP. Whereas the government, many times in many states, elements in the government, senior political leaders are doing very little to dispel this kind of propaganda. So therefore, here is a situation which is very annoying, very disturbing, at the same time a bit problematic, that a section of people, bona fide citizens of the country, are feeling threatened, and there is some kind of question about their citizenship. I think it's high time that the government of the day comes with a national voter identity card or something like that, so that everybody is included, and it's the onus of proving citizenship or the right to vote should be on the government rather than the individual, because there are a lot of people. We have migratory population, we have a lot of people who keep, they live in somewhere and they work somewhere, and their place of origin is somewhere different, and there is a lack of documentation, birth certificate, etc. So the government must include everyone in. And if we have, like, what we call it as a 150 crore population, 140 crore population, and then of course some people can come under lens who have a dubious district, who have come outside. Just very quick point about outsiders. It is a failure of the federal government, central government, that if there are hundreds and thousands of people who have come from outside and living in India illegally. Remember, Mr. Narendra Modi came on this plank of national security in 2014. Here we are in 2026. One quick data point: the number of people the UPA had deported is 10 times more than the number of people deported by this government in the past 12 years.
And another question from you, in your perspective, how might this observation affect the way doubtful voter cases are handled going forward, which was also mentioned by the Supreme Court as well?
I think it's mind-boggling, and I'm not saying from the political prism, because the elections in Bengal is over and it's settled and everybody has accepted the mandate. Even if these kind of dubious voters were included, I think the outcome would have been same, if not similar. Therefore, I think there is no need to link inclusion of voter list or exclusion of voter list with the outcome. But having said that, I think it's a great shame that 27 lakh people, let's talk about Bengal, voted perhaps illegally in 2024 Lok Sabha election, or perhaps denied right to vote in 2026 Assembly election. One of it is correct and one of it is wrong. But both propositions are very disturbing that I say as a citizen of India. If 27 lakh people voted illegally in 2024, then that verdict becomes a little, dubious. If 27 lakh bona fide citizens were denied right to vote in 2026 assembly election, that's very unfortunate. So I think government needs to streamline, and the election commission also. Uh, we have seen this SIR takes place every 20 years or so. I was a very active reporter in Delhi in 2003 when this SIR is supposed to have taken place. I have been telling all political workers, my journalist colleagues, everybody, they show me a single, news clip or a news press print cutting to say that there was some kind of hue and cry about SIR in 2003. So how is it possible that an exercise of that magnitude happened very smoothly in 2003, and in 2026 there is like real havoc is being played?
And another question from you is, what safeguards should exist to ensure that eligible citizens are not wrongfully removed from the electoral rolls while also maintaining the integrity of the elections, especially when we're talking about SIR?
Yeah, I think you asked a very good question, very pertinent question, and this is, but unfortunately, I don't have an answer. We have a very piquant situation. We have 14 types of proofs of identity: your PAN card, your Aadhaar card, your driving license, all kind of your bank account, everything, including the passport. And yet, the government says or tells the court, and courts also recognize that none of these 14 documents are actually prove your citizenship. So it is like in God's hand, whether you're a citizen or you're not. So every time there is uneducated people, marginalized sections, Dalits, tribal, minorities, they have a great apprehension that whether they are considered as bona fide citizens or not. And therefore, I think this is very disturbing, and this needs to be corrected. Let the see. It is very I would say ironical and bizarre and paradox that I travel on a document called passport, and it says that you are a citizen of India. I am getting access to whether I go to England or Africa or anywhere in America. I am treated as a citizen of India, and yet if the government tells Supreme Court that look, the passport is not a proof of that you are an Indian. I think it is something very unfortunate. This should not have been there. As I said, in progressive developed nations, it is government that reaches out to the citizens. Here, the citizens are moving. If you ask me, I have some 8, 10 documents, ready with me. That one day, if somebody asks me, "Are you a citizen of India or not?" I will show my birth certificate of mine, my father, whatever the property we had, the kind of, my grandfather was sent to Kalapani to, as a, for fighting against the British, all kind of thing. And yet there is a great deal of anxiety and stress in my mind. I think this confusion should be over, because people should, as we have seen in many of these, whether it is America or England, you have a one national identity and there is one number, and that works everywhere. And you have biometrics.
And another question to you is that do you think that this clarification will lead to changes in election administration or future litigation on voter eligibility, and if so, how?
How I wish what you are saying is comes true, but not, because I think there is, as I said, there is a narrative, and in narrative, both the ruling party and the opposition, I would say, are guilty of not, coming clean, because there is some kind of confusion that people, want to develop, and a sense of insecurity. And the opposition also wants to highlight this, that here is a government which is going to exclude, the benefits of various government schemes or the guarantees of free ration to people who don't vote for that particular political party. Now that is not the grain of parliamentary democracy. In parliamentary democracy, of course, people would elect somebody with a margin of, let's say, 51 votes and 49 votes. But once the person who wins with 51 votes adopts everybody, including those 49 who have not voted, as one of them, and gives all kind of welfare, concessions, security, safety, all citizenship rights, and that's the very cornerstone of democracy. So if we start doing this, that no political party in India gets more than 40% or so votes, that means the 60% people will always be vulnerable. I think this is very unfortunate. This is against the grain of Indian constitution, liberty, all those noble thoughts that are linked with the citizenry. I think government must come up with a comprehensive scheme and not a new card. I'm not in favor of new card. Let make Aadhaar as a this thing of proof of citizenship and voting right. Link Aadhaar with voter ID, and let there be just one card which will have your biometrics, because there cannot be 5 or 10 Rashid Kidwais, because the one biometric is one. So therefore, if there are some kind of overlapping in Aadhaar, that needs to be corrected. But Aadhaar, to my mind, is a very good substitute for a national identity card that the country needs.
Rashid Kirwai, last question, a follow-up question of what you already have stated, that do you think it's this citizenship, establishing one's citizenship in India is becoming increasingly elusive because people are struggling with its identity versus citizenship? How do you think that this debate can be settled finally for good?
So the debate is, as you are rightly saying, the debate is increasingly becoming problematic, complex, and leading to a lot of anxiety, and I would say a sense of alienation also, because the people are being otherized, that you are a bona fide citizen and person X or Y or Z is not a bona fide citizen. So this is leading to a lot of problems. Actually, citizenship is a birthright, and everybody, when you have a huge country like India, when you have very difficult geography in the northeast and many parts of the country, you need to strengthen the people, particularly who are living on the border areas, whether it is Kashmir or areas bordering Nepal, China, all kind of Sri Lanka. They must have that kind of confidence. They are citizens of India and they are there to defend their motherland with their all might. So these are the people who need to be given a sense of assurance by the government of the day, and by the courts, by the election commission. Equally important is the voting right. Well, I think we need to use technology more judiciously, and this concept of this, that if you're voting for a political party, then you will get the benefit. I think that needs to be corrected. So there is a reason for a sober. If Prime Minister, the stature of Mr. Narendra Modi, who's immensely popular, if he comes and tells citizen, address to the nation, that look, whoever is living in India, contributing to GDP, working hard, honesty, integrity, is part of India. So the denial of citizenship should be exception, not the rule. Here, what we are seeing is I don't want to come up with a number, but a large number of people, large section of people have a worry whether in the final outcome, whether they will be sent to detention center. Which country will take any citizen of India, even if that the citizenship is under some kind of cloud? I think anybody who has any document, whether it is a driving license or a ration card or anything, the effort should be to co-opt them. If somebody is indulging in any anti-national activity, of course that person needs to be shown the door. But as we have seen in many of the things, whether it is Chakmas or Rohingyas or the Bihari Muslims, this migration leads to lot of problems: security, safety, economy, social harmony. Any yardstick you take, there is always a problem. So I think government must get into solution mode rather than trying to get some extra votes and
All
have
right.
some kind of tadka.
All right, Rashid Kirwai, thank you so much for joining me on the telecast and obviously sharing your insight on that story, but shifting our focus to more news coming in.